Once the doors were fully opened, several torches lit up inside the tower, as if leading the way for the two of them. "You have entered a vampire tomb. Quest, explore the tower is now in progress." Quinn thought. "System, did you know what this was?" "I had my guesses, but I couldn't be so sure," the system replied. "These are two things I should warn you about before you proceed. First, a vampire tomb doesn't necessarily mean a vampire is dead. A vampire can choose to go into eternal slumber, which is similar to death but not the same. Eternal slumber means a vampire has chosen to go to sleep forever themselves. It's a permanent state, and there is only one way to be woken up from it: by consuming the blood of someone of the same family. My guess is two things. Either the vampire was a powerful one, and his magic was so great he was able to convince the king-tier beast to act as a guard. To keep it under its control for so long, it handed the blood crystal which you obtained after defeating the beast. My second guess would be that after the beast found the blood crystal, it was compelled to this area. Something was telling it that there was something powerful inside, and it didn't know how to use it. At the same time, it couldn't leave this place due to its curiosity of power." Excited by this prospect, he started to jog after Fex, who had gone quite a way ahead. After they both followed the torches down the path, it eventually led them to a large staircase leading upward. The two of them powered through the many stairs and didn't feel very tired. However, they did feel like the stairs would go on forever and were wondering when they would end. Finally, the stairs had leveled out onto a platform, and another large door could be seen. It was the same size as the one at the entrance, only this one didn't have a strange lock-like mechanism. Up ahead, after the platform, were even more stairs leading up, suggesting they hadn't reached the top yet. With a strong push, the doors opened. Torches around the room suddenly lit up. It was a fairly large square room, but at the same time it was completely bare. There was nothing inside the room, apart from 5 podiums in the center of the room. Each podium had an item on it. They were pieces of armor: a chest piece, a leg piece, an arm piece, and a helmet. Lastly, on the final podium, was a ring. "This is ancient old vampire combat armor. Maybe you can wear this," Fex said, as he picked up the ring of the podium. In an instant, the room felt like it was starting to shake. "What did you do?" Quinn complained. A strange circular cylinder-like shape lifted from the podium and covered each of the items. The cylinder went all the way up to the ceiling of the room they were in. Once the cylinders were formed, the vibration stopped, and it didn't seem like anything else was going to happen. Seeing what had happened, Quinn could only assume the other items were locked away once Fex had picked up the ring. Perhaps the same thing would have happened after touching any of the items. Maybe the vampire who slept here was giving them a choice, a reward for discovering the place, but rather than give them everything, he gifted them a single piece of his treasure. "Here," Vex said, as he threw the ring over to Quinn. He caught the ring in the air and took a look at it. "Inspect. A king-tier blocking ring. When used on a vampire, it will completely block the effects of sunlight, as long as the ring is worn." With this ring, the one weakness Quinn possessed had disappeared. A huge smile went over his face as he quickly placed the ring on. When Logan turned back to look down the tunnel from where they came from, he had saw that no one had followed them. Even with Peter on his shoulder, he never slowed down. He kept running down the tunnel until they eventually reached an open space that had a lot of different paths and tunnels for them to choose from. It was similar to one of the areas where they had just come from. "Let go of me!" Peter shouted, with his eyes now fully red and glowing in the dark. Logan felt the weight on his shoulder was about to shift. He could tell that something was up, and immediately threw Peter off his shoulder, slamming him onto the ground. Peter lifted his head and got a glimpse of Logan, who now had his blaster pointed toward him. "You're still in there, right, Peter?" said Logan. But Peter suddenly started to seize. His body furiously shook as he thrashed around on the floor. Looking for some kind of solution, Logan picked out and held out his altered hand scanner. If it just worked, then he would be able to scan the tunnels and find out where the other deceased students were located. Instead of walking through blindly and playing their chances, they would at least have some benchmark as to where they should go. But for some reason, ever since coming down underground, the scanner was useless. "Why won't you work?" Logan said, and Peter was now standing in front of him with his head facing down towards the ground. It was unknown whether he had recovered his sanity or if he had already been taken over by his hunger and primal urges. After Quinn and Fex realized that there was nothing the two of them could do to retrieve their items, they decided to leave the room. On the final platform, there was another large, arch-shaped double door like the one before. It also had no lock, and all the two needed to do was push it open with their two hands. Just like every room they had entered before, the lights started to light up one by one, revealing what the room looked like. From the door to the center room was a large red carpet. It reached the center, where there was a very large circle on the ground. Past this was a red carpet on the other end of the circle, which continued forward until it eventually reached a large chair. Looking at the large chair, or throne, it looked like only a person of significance would be allowed to sit in such a place. That was when Quinn spotted something while looking at the throne, but just behind the chair, a little bit above, it looked like a clear glass pane, and inside was a large sword-like weapon. The sword didn't look regular, even though it was locked away behind a glass casing. It seemed to have several black chains wrapped around it, from the hilt up to the tip of the blade. While looking at the blade closer, he could tell it was a beast blade rather than just a regular sword. The handguard seemed to be quite scaly and rocky. It was red and had a pattern that matched the armor they had seen earlier. Between the handguard and the bladed part was a red gem. It looked very similar to the crystal that Quinn had obtained after defeating the King-tier beast. From the crystal, inside the sword, a single red line ran up the blade until the tip, placing his clawed gauntlet fingertips on the glass pane covering it. He started to use all his strength, hoping to make a scratch or an indentation. Just like with all of the materials they had discovered before in the tower, it was almost unbreakable for him. He took a step back, and once again the room seemed to slightly vibrate. In front of the sword, a podium started to rise. The vibration stopped in the room, and so did the podium. On top, there was a diamond-shaped hole. As he gently ran his fingers over the top of the podium, another message appeared. "Would you like to insert your blood crystal? Once inserted, the blood crystal may not be removed. Yes, no." "What exactly can a blood crystal be used for?" Quinn asked the system in his head. The system said, "The blood crystal can be used as a beast crystal. They are used to either create armor or weapons. The unique thing about a blood weapon is that it can evolve and grow stronger. However, depending on the crystal used, there is a limit to its growth and also its starting point. What you have right now in your hand is the lowest tier of blood crystals." He looked at the weapon behind the glass case once again, and it was like nothing he had seen before. "Is that a blood weapon?" "Yes," the system replied. "Small blood crystal has been inserted." The room started to shake slightly once again, and the podium, along with the crystal, started to sink into the ground slowly. "Quest explore the tower complete." After standing there for a few moments, he quickly realized that nothing was happening. The glass covering the sword was still there. Somewhere else, underground at the same time, Logan was backing steadily away, holding out his blaster at Peter. He hadn't made any moves yet, but he could see his body slowly breathing in and out, not moving a step from his position. Using one of his hands, he picked up the scanner and immediately turned it on. For some reason, the scanner was online. After quickly scanning the tunnels around them, Logan found what he was looking for. In one of the tunnels to his right, not too far from here, were the bodies of some students who had met an unfortunate end after falling from above. "Yes, Peter, I think I can solve your problem." In Logan's excitement, he had placed both eyes on the scan only for a brief second. When he looked up, Peter was no longer standing where he was directly in front of him. Back in the strange tower, Quinn realized what was the change he was feeling. After inserting the blood crystal into the podium, it seemed like whatever was blocking out his senses before was no longer there. He could now clearly sense Peter. With this, shock had entered his heart. Sensing Peter now, he could feel a mix of emotions and feelings rush over his mind and body. "Damn it! Is this because of the fight from before?" Quinn said. "We have to hurry and get back to the others." A process had begun when the blood crystal was inserted into the podium and went back into the floor. The center circle started to rise from the floor, and it finally stopped when it reached a height a little larger than an average human. A few seconds later, the metal circle cylinder dropped quickly back down to the ground, and left in its place was a human figure. It was a handsome male figure, with pale white skin and dark black hair that seemed to go all the way down to the person's waist. Slowly, his eyes opened and a red glow could be seen. "I wonder how long I've been asleep," the man said. Holding out his hand with his hand open, he faced it towards the weapon behind the glass. A strange force compelled it towards the man, and the weapon smashed through the glass and into the man's hand. "Let's see if anything has changed in the outside world," the man said. Just a second ago, Peter was there, right in front of Logan. Seeing something so dangerous as to potentially be anywhere in the room with him was starting to make even Logan nervous. He no longer had any sticky light balls to shoot out, and his suit only produced enough light for him to be able to see a few meters in front of him. Peter could see as clear as day down here. They were unfavorable odds, and Logan started to curse himself, thinking about how he ever got himself into this type of situation. A sharp, sudden sound was heard to his right, and a blast was shot from his blaster in an instant. "I don't want to hurt you, Peter. Suppose I hit you now before you've eaten anything. There's a good chance you can't heal," Logan said calmly. His voice was full of confidence, but inside his mind he was panicking a little. As he said those words, groans could be heard once again in a specific direction. When Logan looked at where they were coming from, he could see Peter knelt on the floor, holding his stomach. "Logan, just leave me. I don't think it's safe. Go now," Peter shouted. The others thought the old Peter was completely gone, lost, but that wasn't true at all. Peter still had feelings, he still had worries, and inside he was still scared as always. Then the sound of footsteps was heard. Out of the tunnel, Logan appeared with a student on his back. He placed it on the floor and took a few steps back. "I know this might be disrespectful, but you are already dead. I promise I will find out who your family is and treat them well. They will live a life of happiness due to your help for as long as I am alive." The two boys continued to run through the town at breaking speed. On the way to the tower, they hadn't seen any high-level beasts. Quinn was now sure of it. With this thought in his head, he was able to freely run as fast as he could toward Peter. He was worried about what could happen, mostly since he was with the others, and worried about what would happen if the travelers were to find out and get involved. Following closely behind, Fex was struggling to keep up. Suddenly, Quinn stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong?" Fex asked. There were two reasons why Quinn had stopped. The first was that Quinn felt that Peter was no longer hungry. "Thank you, Logan," Quinn said under his breath. He didn't know why, but he had a hunch that if anyone could solve the problem, it would have been him. The second reason for stopping was that Quinn could sense and smell a familiar presence. "Ah, it's the teacher," Vex said and pointed. Leo said, "I'm here to search for the remaining students. Your friends who were with you have already been escorted outside to the surface." "Quickly!" Leo shouted. "We must get out of here and run. There is something down here, something incredibly powerful. I can sense its aura. We have to leave now." They both quickly followed Leo closely behind as the three of them ran out of the town and into the tunnel, not once looking back. But his strange actions made Quinn wonder. It was the first time that he saw his teacher running away from a confrontation. The tower they had just left was known as a vampire's tomb, and judging by the site of the building and what was left behind, it was a powerful one. "Didn't you say a vampire would need the blood of one of its family members? It can't wake up, right?" Quinn asked the system, but it had chosen to remain silent. "Answer me," Quinn snapped in his mind. This time he was insistent and wanted an answer. "Sorry," the system replied. "I was just thinking about the possibilities. But perhaps there was a chance we did wake it up." "But how?" Quinn replied. "The only thing I can think of is the blood crystal. Remember how I said a blood crystal was quite rare? Well, that's because a blood crystal is harvested from a vampire's body itself. Just like how the beasts contain a crystal inside their bodies, vampires do too." "Why didn't you say something earlier then?" Quinn complained. "I thought the same as you at the time, that the crystal would help you get the weapon." The three of them had finally left the town. They had gone through one of the tunnels into an open area with several different pathways. It was easy for Leo to select the path back, as he remembered which direction he had entered from, and he led the two students out. Finally, they were about to leave the strange city and everything that had been found behind. While traveling through the tunnel, it started to slightly tilt upward with no end in sight, and they were unsure how long it would take them to get out. Finally, the end of the tunnel could be seen, and daylight was shining through. Both Quinn and Fex never thought they would be happy to see the sun, but they truly were. The two boys continued to follow Leo back through the forest. There were still many beasts in the forest, but thanks to Leo's ability, they were able to avoid all of them and select the safest path heading back to the shelter. Eventually, they arrived where all the remaining students were. They were staying in the shelter, in the large open space on the ground. The other military staff were taking care of them. "All right, everyone," a soldier shouted. "It's time to gather up. Your Sergeant Leo has an important announcement to make." Faye and him stood in front of them. After Leo had gone after Dell's class and it took longer than usual to return, Faye had decided to make the executive decision to call back all of the students to the shelter. Instead, to minimize the risk, the plan was to go as one large group, while both Faye and Leo would guide them. Rather than split them up via their homeroom classes, they would cover less ground this way, and the expedition would be a lot slower, but it would also be safer this way. The first person to arrive was Leo, and behind him, all of the students started to follow. As the other group saw Dell's group, sounds of gasps and words of concern were heard. "What happened to them?" Faye asked. "It looks like they went off trail due to an advanced tier beast," Leo explained. A look of horror appeared on Faye's face as their fears were confirmed. "Don't worry, I already dealt with it before even meeting up with the class. As for the remaining students, according to the teacher, Dell, they were all eaten, and there was no chance the students survived." The two of them looked over at where Dell was. He was currently barging his way through the injured students and going to the front of the queue. As Leo took another step forward, he suddenly stopped. Before anyone else, he could hear the sound of the leaves ruffling from behind. "Looks like we finally made it," Andy said as he appeared out of the forest. The group of travelers had arrived, but they weren't alone. They also brought back Vorden, Sia, Layla, Peter, and Logan. Inside the tunnels, Logan had managed to regroup quickly with the travelers once his scanner was working. After the travelers and students had walked out of the trees and vines, what followed next started to cause alarm in the camp. The large lion-like beast came out as well. "Beast! Beast!" students shouted as they recognized the beast as a powerful-looking one, perhaps at the advanced level. "Calm down," one of the commanders who was looking after the students shouted. "That beast will do us no harm. It belongs to the Bree family." After hearing that name, the students quickly began to calm down. Seeing the stripes on both Faye and Leo's sides, Andre knew straight away that they were the highest commanding officers in this shelter. He approached the two of them and saluted at them out of respect. Faye did the same back, but Leo had chosen not to do anything. "Leo, I know you can't see, but this is someone from the Bree family, and they just saluted you," Faye whispered. "Anyway, I believe these students are yours," Andre said as he opened up his palm, telling the students to go over to the other side. Sia had the biggest smile on her face as she ran forward toward the shelter and the other students, while the others decided to remain, hoping to hear the conversation between these two powerhouses. "Thank you," Leo replied. "Would you mind telling me where you found them? Perhaps I will be able to search for others in the same area. You have done enough, so there is no need for you to go out of your way," Leo said. "There is something we must inform you about," Andy said as he stepped forward and handed over a scanner to Faye. They revealed information that they had kept secret from the military, the fact that they had discovered an underground town. Not only that, but it seemed like it was made from a Dalki structure. "Leo, both Quinn and Fex, they're still down there," Vorden said. Logan then handed over the altered scanner he had created to Faye as well. It displayed the information he had found. You, I can't believe you were hiding this from us. Do you know that if you had given this information to us beforehand, the students would never have been sent to a planet like this in the first place?" Before she even knew it, her fist was already flying toward Andy's face. At the same time, she felt a slash going towards her arm. Images of her arm being sliced off were seen. Quickly pulling it back, she looked at her hand and could see it was still intact. Vorden and the others were prepared for a clash between the travelers and the sergeants. They were ready to help Leo wherever they could. Other than helping them find an exit, the travelers hadn't helped them much. In the end, Quinn was the one who killed the beast. Also, they still remembered how much in debt they were to Leo for saving them from the Dalki. Every one of the students, including the other soldiers, silently watched from the sideline. They were too afraid to get involved. If they did, it could cause trouble, due to the relations one of the Big Four had with the military. The pressure emitting from the two groups was immense. One wrong word or action might make the already fearsome looming presence break out and swallow them whole. However, they were unaware of what Leo thought. Right now, the people in front of him had put the students he was responsible for in danger. "Leo, when we were down there, there was an incredibly strong beast. For now I think Quinn and Fex are safe, but I don't know how long they will survive. They need help now," Vorden said. After hearing these words, Leo's grip around his hilt weakened. It worked. With that, Leo continued to walk into the forest while also carefully stepping his feet over a large root going across the floor. All they needed to do now was wait, hoping Fex and Quinn could return safely. After waiting for an hour, Leo finally returned, and this time he wasn't alone. By his side were both Fex and Quinn. Layla had run up to greet them, and the others were happy to see them as well. "I've made my decision," Leo said. "I'm going to cancel the expedition and return to the academy." "Are you sure?" Faye replied. "Judging from what the travelers told us, the Dalkey settlement seems to be abandoned." "No," Leo replied immediately. "When I went down there I could sense it. There is still something there, and it's at least the power of a four-spiked Dalkey." Only Leo knew the truth, that the energy that was emitting from the being was similar to both Fex and Quinn. "The winners are as follows. So will the following students please come to the front? Vorden Blade, Layla Monroe, Sia Green, P.O. Blank, Logan Green, Fex Seg, and finally, Quinn Talon." "How did they get the top marks? Our group managed to scan around 15 different plants and 3 new beasts. Are they saying they scanned more than that?" a student complained with a frown. "They must have done that, otherwise why were they called up?" another replied. The students had been called and arrived at the front, but instead of looks of admiration and jealousy, they were all stared down with looks of hatred. Seeing that the students' anger still hadn't been quelled, Faye herself decided to take some action, based on some information she had found out earlier. "Listen up, all of you. There's a reason why these students here have been selected as the winners of today's event." She rummaged through the crate for scanners that had accumulated behind them, until she found one in particular. "This scanner here is from Logan, a student. At the time, each of these students had discovered something worth a lot more points than any beast or plant would ever be." After pressing a button on the scanner, a 3D holographic model appeared from the scanner. It showed a recreation of the town that Logan had managed to get on his scanner, the one he had made before entering the tunnels below. "As you can all see, this right here is a Dalkey base. It looks like they had arrived on this planet before us. This is the reason why we are leaving, not just because there are some powerful beasts on this planet." Everyone understood that. While looking around, Quinn noticed that the soldiers were busy gathering their things. The same couldn't be said for the civilians who lived in the treetop homes. They stood there with worried looks on their faces, peeking from above. "Why aren't they packing their things?" Quinn asked. "What do you mean? These people have nowhere to go," Layla replied. "They probably spent all the money they had to move here. Even if the military did allow them to use the teleporters and head back to Earth, they would only be made homeless with no shelter or way to earn credits." "But if the soldiers leave this place, then there will be no one to protect them from beast attacks," Quinn replied. Layla remained silent when Quinn said this, and Vorden simply placed his hand on his shoulder. They were both aware of the fate of these people. While Quinn was a little naive, while the students walked through the teleporters, a young girl who looked only around the age of 5 started to wave her hand goodbye to the students, unaware of what was happening. "This world needs to change. The people at the top need to come crumbling down, and when I'm strong enough, I'll come back for you," Quinn said, although he was aware that by that time it would probably be too late.
"Ha ha! Didn't I leave some basic treasure of mine behind? I believe it was a set of armor. However, whoever entered the tower might have taken a vital piece. I did leave it there as a reward. Let's just hope they didn't choose the area that covers the crown jewels."
As the man walked over to the podium, which wasn't encased in a metallic cylinder, as he looked down, he blinked and raised a brow.
"Now, out of all the items available for them to get, why on earth would they choose to take the ring?"
the man thought to himself, rather confused. He then walked over to the other 5 podiums that were covered in the strange metal casing. As he placed his fingertips on the cold outside, in an instant they seemed to react and started to vibrate. Each one of them went back into the ground, revealing the pieces of armor that were once there. The helmet allowed most of his face to be seen. It had 2 spiraling red horns on top, with a thin piece of metal that went down to the nose. When stepping outside, he had expected one of 2 things. A parade of people would be there to welcome him back, or a big fight would be taking place. But he saw neither of those things. Instead, all that was left was an abandoned town. Finally, he came across something that looked a little interesting. It was a strange human-sized beast that looked like it had been killed not too long ago. The reason why he found it interesting, though, was that he could sense strange energy from it similar to his own.
"Now why would a blood crystal have been left behind with a beast?"
Seeing this, he felt the same energy as the beast. He thought that maybe his awakening was an accident. The man continued to walk out of the town into the tunnels. The sword was now wrapped around his back, using the chains to hold it onto his chest piece of armor. A step was taken out of the tunnel and into the sunlight. The man was surrounded by nature, and the rays of sunlight shot through the trees and leaves. They were touching both the skin on his hands and the open area on his face. However, unlike Quinn and Fex, there was no reaction to the man.
My skin's a little itchy. It would have been nice to have that ring. Otherwise, I might develop a rash of some sort,
he complained as he scratched the front of his hand. Ah! A scream was suddenly heard coming from his right. Immediately, without thinking about it, he started to dash in the direction of the scream. Eventually, he could see a little girl just by a river, but she wasn't alone. A large snake, nearly 4 times the size of the girl, was on her body, with its head held high, looking at her. The snake dashed with its head leading forward. With nothing else to do, the girl closed her eyes and screamed once more as she felt like her life was over. When no pain was felt, she decided to open her eyes again. The snake was no longer there. It had disappeared entirely, and instead, standing in its place was a man in strange red armor.
"It's okay," the man said. "The big snake is gone and won't bother you any more."
Looking at the girl, he noticed that there were a few cuts on her body. The worst wound was the one on her knee. It was severely scraped, and blood was being drawn from it. The man grabbed her leg and looked at it carefully.
"It looks quite bad, but I should be able to help you with that."
He then spat on both of his hands and started to rub them together.
"Trust me, my spit is like magic."
He then placed his spit-covered hands on top of the knee, holding it down. When the man let go of her knee, the wound had completely disappeared. "Thank you, sir. You must have the ability to heal," she said.
"Ability?"
the man replied, confused. "What's your name?" she asked.
"You can call me Arthur."
Just then, the smile that was on the girl's face only seconds ago dropped. She started pulling on Arthur's arm hard. "Arthur, me and you are friends, right?" Arthur nodded in response. "Then please, you have to help me. My family, everyone here is in trouble. The soldiers, they went away. I don't know why. But they left us all here, and shortly after there was an attack." Arthur could see this was tough for her. She looked extremely young, barely older than 5. He then picked her up with one hand and brought her close to his chest. Sniffing his nose into the air, he could smell it.
"Don't worry, I know where they are."
A sweet smell entered his nose, a scent he remembered vividly. The smell of blood. As usual, the head general Paul had left on one of his expeditions. This meant that the 3 other generals were left to run the military base, including the school, while the others were away. Mike, the oldest and most experienced of the generals, was mainly in charge of running the base and other soldiers when this happened. This was a task usually for the head general, but because he was often away on other work, Mike would be put in charge. What this meant was the remaining 2 generals, Nathan, head of first years, and Duke, head of second years, were in charge of running the school. Inside his office, Nathan had his feet up on his desk and was lying back in his chair. It was the first time he felt this way in a while. With the first year on the outing, there wasn't much for him to do at the moment, and he could finally take a break. "I wish I had this much free time every day," Nathan said. Although he was still concerned about the students, the fact that Leo was with them eased him a little. He was one of the very few people who actually knew Leo's real strength. The probability of the students being on a high-risk planet was low, but even if they were, he was sure Leo could deal with it. Just then a loud knock was heard on his door. "Come in," Nathan shouted. The soldier quickly opened the door and had a panicked look all over his face. "Sir, it's Sergeant Leo. He has sent a message informing us that he will be coming back soon." "What?" Nathan said, jumping out of his chair. "It's only been 1 day." The man gulped before passing on the next bit of information. "That's not all, sir. I think you better take a look at the report he sent. It seems like the whole shelter will be evacuated from the place." Quickly, Nathan read the detailed report that had been written, and his eyes opened wide. If what was in the report was true, he couldn't fault Leo's decision-making. Inside the portal room in the school, multiple medical staff and military personnel were there waiting on standby due to Nathan's orders. The information from the integration at the shelter had been passed on. Most of the students had already been healed at the shelter, but this was just a precautionary measure. Nathan was also standing in the room, nervously tapping his foot away until finally the portal started to flicker. The first person to come through the portal was Leo, and eventually all the students began to follow from behind. The students were led to their class groups, where their teachers would round them up and wait for further instructions. When the last student exited the portal and everyone there had been confirmed present, Nathan gave the command. "Cut the link," Nathan ordered. 2 soldiers immediately ran up to the portal and pressed 2 buttons on either side of the portal. A few seconds later, the orange wavy-like color had disappeared. Looking at the portal through the circle, the other end of the wall could be seen. This was a necessary step to make sure that no beasts or other things would be able to follow them from behind and enter the base. The portal was then quickly taken away, off to the side. It wouldn't be used for student activities, and would only be used once again when the portal color had been changed to red and for stronger soldiers to enter. The students didn't know what was going on, as they waited in the room for the next command. While doing so, Vorden had a heavy thought on his mind as he looked over in the direction of Sia. "Hey, Quinn, we need to do something about Sia," Vorden whispered. "She saw your abilities, and not only that, but she also saw Fex transform into that thing. I don't know why she hasn't told anyone yet, but it's too risky for her to know." Hearing this, Quinn couldn't agree more. It didn't matter why Sia was keeping it a secret. Unlike the others before, she wasn't a friend. "Before you go," Vorden said, as he placed his hand outward and handed something over to Quinn. When looking at what he had just been given, Quinn noticed it looked identical to the earring that Fex was wearing, black in color and with a rectangular shape. "It's that flying bull. It told me to hand it back to Fex. While you're talking to him, you can hand it back." Quinn looked at the item and found it interesting that the bull was able to transform into a small piece of jewelry like this. It made him wonder if he would be able to get something like this. As he walked over to Fex and handed over the earring, he leaned over and started to whisper. He asked, "Hey Fex, we were just speaking, but do you think you could use your skills on Sia to make her forget about the whole situation?" "I don't think it will be a problem, but I'll be honest with you, it's a lot of information and a lot of things happen. It will be hard to fill in the blanks in her head if I do this. It might even cause her brain to be slightly damaged, removing so many events." Quinn didn't like the sound of that. He despised the thought that he might have to harm people connected to his case in order to keep it hidden. Just because she had the fate of joining Quinn's team, she would now have to suffer for it. When someone did something wrong to him, like the time in the desert, he had no problems, but Sia hadn't directly tried to hurt him. "What do you think?" Quinn asked, hoping for some guidance. "If it was down to me, I would have removed her memories already. It's just too risky, Quinn. I know you by now, and maybe you feel bad for her, but if humans find out about us, then that means the vampires will also find out about us, and I'm more worried about them. They will kill and slaughter every person that knows of this secret to keep it hidden." What Fex said hit Quinn quite hard. Not only would they go after him, but Vorden, Peter, Layla, Aaron, and Leo. It would affect multiple people who had only helped him so far. Quinn clenched his fist, mumbling, "Sometimes we have to sacrifice a few to save many." He hated saying these words, but he needed to convince himself. It felt like what he was about to do right now was no different from what the military was doing. They hadn't even tried to save the people at the shelter they were at. But they had a choice, while Quinn felt like he did not. "Go ahead," Quinn said, as he gave the nod. Right now, Sia had departed from the others. She had promised herself that she would keep the others' secrets, but the main reason was that she didn't want to be involved with people like that. A group of students who had way too many secrets. It just smelt like trouble. She didn't like the military that much in the first place, so getting on their good side didn't mean much for her. If she could go through her life without ever having to interact with others again, then she would be happy. The problem was, she couldn't. While deep in thought about what her next move would be, she felt someone walking up from behind. "You!" she said, a little startled as she moved back a bit. Still in her head were images of what the student had turned into. Although she was terrified, she quickly took a deep breath and calmed herself down. There was a high chance that Fex just had a transform ability that changed him into a type of muscular creature. Still, she remembered the power and loss of control Fex had back then, and it seemed like the bloodsucker was a lot more frightening than even the king-tier beast they had faced. "Don't worry, you won't be afraid of me anymore," Fex said, as his eyes started to glow red. It was the usual thing, and something Fex had done plenty of times while in school. He just needed to wait for the typical response, as her eyes would start to grow dull and glow a slight red in return. Sia, seeing Fex's eyes change slightly, stepped back. "Hey, what are you trying to do to me?" she shouted. As she did this, a few of the students nearby turned their heads to look at what was going on. "Huh? Why isn't it working? Am I too tired? No, that can't be it," Fex thought. "Is her mind strong?" He didn't quite catch on to what was happening at first, since it was a feeling he wasn't used to, but it was clear that she was able to resist his powers. Seeing that now, others were paying attention to them. Fex quickly turned around. "Sorry, just forget about it," he said as he walked off back to the others. "Did you do it?" Quinn asked, unsure of what had just happened. "No," Fex replied. "She resisted it. It's the first time something like this has happened." "Isn't she only a level 4 ability user?" Quinn thought. The influence skill relied on one's charm skill. Up to this point, Fex's charm had always been higher and stronger than Quinn's. Fex had used his ability on several students before, and that included level 4 ability users. He never thought of the possibility of his influence not working. The problem was, it didn't matter how strong the individual was with their abilities. It was all about how strong their minds were. There were some people Quinn could imagine the influence skill never working on, such as Logan, Vorden, and Leo. These people were too strong-willed. However, when looking at Sia, he didn't feel the same way. Wasn't she just an ordinary student? So why didn't Fex's influence work on her? Hearing the shocking news that Fex had just failed, Quinn was busy pondering what to do. There was always the chance that something like this might happen. Perhaps a high level would see them, and they would be unable to deal with it in the usual way. This thought was always in the back of Quinn's mind. When he thought about it again and again, the ending that played out in his head was always the same. He would have to kill them. It was too risky to leave something open, and while he was still in military school, there was no chance to run away or escape. While looking at Sia, images started to flash through Quinn's mind of the possible ways he could do this, and a certain disturbing image entered his head. One of them was holding Sia in both hands with blood dripping from his mouth, and by her neck there were 2 puncture wounds. "Hey, why don't you try to clear her memory?" Fex said. This suggestion might have seemed out of the blue before, but right now, not so much. Fex had his reasons. After witnessing Quinn fight against the king-tier beast, he knew that his speed was already that of a vampire noble. Fex wasn't sure if Quinn had evolved and gone to the stage of vampire noble just yet, but there was still a chance his charm was stronger than his. Coincidentally, when Fex had made this suggestion, Quinn had thought the same thing. Were his current charm points higher than Fex's? He felt a great increase in speed once his points had reached above 30. If his charm skills didn't work against Sia, there was a good chance that it could still work once his charm skills had reached above 30. It could work, but if it doesn't... Before he could even make a decision, Nathan had already started to make an announcement. "Listen up, everyone," Nathan said as he raised his hand in the air. "There is no need for the students to stay here any longer. Feel free to head back to your rooms, and in the morning we shall inform you of your schedule next week. We might even send a message out tonight, so keep an eye out for it on your wristwatch. As for all homeroom teachers, I would like you to stay behind for now." As soon as Nathan said those words, the doors to the portal hall opened wide, and the students were heading back to their dorm rooms. They were tired, defeated, and wanted to forget about the experience they had gone through. By then, Sia was already gone. It was now night, and the curfew for the students to stay in their rooms was about to pass. For now, he would have to trust Layla to keep an eye on her until he met up with her the next day. All the students promptly left the room, and the teachers remained, along with the sergeants and Nathan. "First, I would like to tell you that the whole planet has been evacuated of military personnel for now. We will no longer be required to explore the planet, and a special ops unit will be sent in the future to figure out whether the Dalki have already inhabited the place or not," Nathan explained. "Wait, I don't understand," Dell said, a little frustrated. "I thought we all left because we knew the Dalki were there." "Our information sources say they might have been chased away, or even something else. The reason why I am saying this is that their base is still full of blue crystals. If the Dalki had taken over the planet already, they would have taken all the crystals with them already." Although Dell didn't have any wish to continue the mission alone, he thought they might still have a chance to complete it with Leo and Faye by his side. He knew what the military was like. He had been with them long enough. Because this expedition had been cancelled early, they would soon ask them to go on another one. If they had finished this one, they might have been good for a whole year. "This information would have been passed on to you all later on anyway," Nathan explained. "The real reason why I asked you to stay behind is the upcoming inter-military base event in 2 weeks." "What does that have to do with us?" a female teacher asked. "Usually all the second years take all the places, right?" "Yes, usually that is the case, but this year they have decided to do something different. There are a few strong first-year students from the other military bases that wish to take part in the event. So this year, they have decided that each class must select at least one student for the 3 main events: Ranged Ability Tournament, Fighting Tournament, and Crafting Tournament. You all should have a list ready for me by the end of the week of who you think will participate. Paul has stated that this intermilitary tournament is an important event, so you must select your best. If your students do well, this will reflect well on you, and you will be rewarded for it. Not all of our positions are based on strength, and soon one of our oldest sergeants will be retiring. Does anyone have a list of the current rankings of students?" Hearing what Nathan had just said, Dell started to have a slightly worried look on his face. Not only did the students think Dell's class was one of the weakest ones, but the teachers did as well, and Dell was aware of this. In his head, he was trying to think of just who to pick for the event. A soldier from the side walked up to Nathan and handed him over a tablet. On the tablet was a list of every first-year student with a score beside their name. "Well, well, this is a surprise," Nathan said. "It seems like Dell's class has the most top-ranked students currently." Hearing this, his jaw nearly dropped to the floor. He thought, then suddenly, how could it be? He started to remember what had happened. Leo had awarded the group with the most points for the outing. That group belonged to his class. Not only that, but in the last assessment, Quinn and his group didn't do too bad either, scoring around the mid-level. With top scores in one and middle scores in the other, it positioned Quinn's group and teammates relatively high on the current ranking. "I shall be expecting some good things from you," Nathan said as he looked at Dell. "Now go get some rest, everyone. I will update you with what is to happen tomorrow." At another military base, it seemed like the group of teachers were having a similar meeting. However, this one was a lot more formal. All the teachers had gathered in a meeting room. There were a total of 10 teachers, including the sergeant, who sat at the head of the table. One of the teachers sat upright, stiff and listening keenly to every word being said. "Does everyone understand?" a relatively large, fat man said at the front. "Yes, sir," Silver replied the quickest, and was the most responsive. "Why can't you guys be more like her?" the man said. "Not only does she always look stunning in the morning, but she works hard, is responsive, and she's the new one. Keep this up." The man then turned off the presentation as he left the meeting room. The other teachers followed, leaving the room one by one, when a male teacher named Justin noticed that Silver still hadn't left her seat. She had remained in the same position throughout the meeting, and even when it was over she remained firm. "Hey, Silver, the meeting's over. Are you coming back?" Justin asked. Silver turned her head, and her silver hair with strands of black was tossed across her face. As Justin saw this, he felt like he was watching one of those shampoo commercials in slow motion. Everything seemed to slow down as he appreciated her beauty. "I'm sorry, my mind was on something else," Silver said, as she stood up from her seat and walked straight past Justin out of the door, ignoring him. "Wait!" Justin called out. "Maybe I can help. Do you need anything?" Silver lifted her hand and wafted it about in the air. "I don't think I would even ask for your help with boiling an egg. Just stick to teaching." As she walked off, her head was still filled with one thought. In the meeting, they mentioned the tournament was coming up. Every single base would travel to Base 1 to participate, the largest military base of them all. Here, she would finally meet the person she was looking for. "I can almost smell you, Fex," she said as she licked her lips. The students had better sleep than they had, as compared to the whole time they had spent at school. They were exhausted from the trip, and more than they realized both mentally and physically. Although a lot of them didn't like the military school, they had to admit it was nice to be back here. In terms of danger, it's one of the safest places they could be right now. Late last night, a message was sent out to all of the students, stating that their morning classes had been canceled. At the same time, in the afternoon, they would be required to return to their homeroom classes. Before anything else, Quinn decided to make a stop outside the girls' dorm and was currently standing outside Layla's room. He had traveled there early in the morning, the second he was able to leave his room. It seemed like no one else had woken up yet. He knocked and patiently waited until a drowsy-looking Layla answered the door. She was standing there by the doorway, rubbing her eyes with her short pink pajama bottoms. It looked as if the shirt was barely hanging onto her, as the top of her shoulders could be seen. "Who's here so early in the morning?" she said as she finally stopped rubbing her eyes. "Quinn? Wait, Quinn!" she shouted. Quickly, Layla grabbed her shirt, doing her buttons up, as her face had gone bright red. If she had known who was coming to the door, she would have been better dressed than this, but it was too late, and Quinn had already seen her. Regaining her composure, she wanted to redirect the attention back towards Quinn. "Do you need something? It must be important if you came this early." When asking the question, she took a look at his face. Layla noticed that only she was flustered and worried about the situation, whereas Quinn didn't seem fazed at all. He didn't feel embarrassed by what he had seen, and the situation was only awkward for her. "I didn't realize I was that unattractive," she thought. Although that wasn't the case at all. When Quinn first saw her at the door, the first thing he noticed was that Layla had quite a nice body. The problem was, ever since he turned into a vampire, even though the feelings were there, it was as if they were suppressed. They didn't show up on the surface. There were a few times this happened to him before, such as when he was scared. For certain situations, he thought it was quite helpful. When going through the whole ordeal with Peter and seeing him eat the human flesh, he believed it was the only thing that had gotten him through it. Otherwise, he might never have been able to sleep again. The other situation where it has helped was during fights. Before, fighting as a human, the adrenaline would get to him. His hands and body would start trembling before the fight had even begun. Still, just as some feelings were suppressed, others seemed to be amplified, and one of these feelings was anger. There were a few occasions when he felt like this feeling had wholly consumed him and taken over. Of course, he had this happen as a human. When one was so angry they didn't even know what they were doing, and their bodies acted before they did. Only now do these angry episodes seem to be happening more often. Things that wouldn't have bothered him so much now grate on him, like the shopkeeper, and when Sia stabbed him with her spirit spear. Peeking his head slightly through the door, he started to look around to see if he could see Sia. In the room, he could see a bundle of quilts all rolled up and a person inside fast asleep. "Did she do anything to you last night?" Quinn whispered. Layla then walked forward and closed the door slightly behind her as she shook her head. "We didn't speak much before she was a team member. Honestly, it's pretty much the same as she said before. We still talked to each other casually, but didn't say anything about what happened on the trip at all." Hearing this, Quinn didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. Was she just trying to pretend everything didn't happen? "If you don't mind," Quinn asked, "would you be able to get her to come here now and say I need to speak to her about something?" "I can try," Layla said. Layla walked up to Sia's bed and planned to try to gently wake her up by rolling her back and forth. But when she was a few steps away from the bed, Sia said, "I'm awake, you don't have to wake me up." She took the quilt off and sat upright. Unlike Layla, she was already in her military uniform rather than her pajamas. She then looked Layla in the eyes. "It's one of your friends, right?" she said. "I'll speak to them, but please come with me." While saying these words, Layla could feel they were genuine, and there was a slight fear in them. It was a normal reaction after what she had seen. She got off the bed and walked towards the door. Without asking, she forcefully grabbed Layla's hand. She practically dragged her with her to the door. Quinn could see the two of them holding hands and didn't quite know what to make of it. "I was wondering which one of you they would send to come talk to me," Sia said, "but I guess it would make sense for the so-called leader they all follow to come to speak to me." "Leader?" Quinn replied strangely. He never saw himself as the leader of the group. That position, he felt, belonged more to either Vorden or Logan. They were the ones making the decisions most of the time. The reason why Sia had come to this conclusion was that it seemed like whenever they were planning stuff or talking, everyone in the group would always naturally ask Quinn for confirmation. It was as if Quinn didn't agree with it, then they wouldn't go through with it. Even if he didn't feel that way, it was clear he was the natural leader of their group. Ignoring what had just been said, Quinn decided to continue with what he wanted to do. He wasted no time and immediately activated his influence skill. Once again, Sia could see the person's eyes in front of her glow red, only this time, something was drawing her in as her mind seemed to drift away. Noticing what was happening, she clenched her left fist hard and was free, while the other hand was holding on to Layla. While Quinn was in the middle of using his skill, he suddenly smelled something sweet. "Is that blood?" Sia couldn't feel the drifting feeling again, and her mind was back to where it was, once again. Looking in the direction of the smell, Quinn noticed that blood was dripping off Sia's hands. She had managed to dig her fingernails into the palm of her hand, causing an immense amount of pain, redirecting her mind somewhere else, causing his skill to fail. The action didn't go unnoticed, and even Layla was impressed. One would have to have extreme willpower to be able to hurt themselves to the point where they would bleed. The normal reaction for a human was to not hurt itself. Even the agents at Pure would struggle to do something like this. "Again, you guys tried doing something to me," she said as she backed away, now clenching Layla's hand even tighter. "Look, if it's about what I saw, I won't say anything. I don't know why you were hiding your abilities and power. The only thing I will say to you is, don't threaten me. I don't know who you think I am, but I'm not like the people you have met before. Remember, I'm keeping your secret, so if I need a favor from you guys, I'll be coming to you." With that, Sia slammed the door shut, and Quinn was unable to get the last word in. "Maybe it didn't work now, but I felt something," he said. Quinn could feel that it started to work, but her mind was too strong, as she was able to resist his charm skills. If he was to get his charm points over 30, he was confident he could remove her memory. For Sia hadn't told their secret so far, even though there were plenty of opportunities. For now, he would just have to keep an eye on her and trust Layla to make sure she didn't say anything. Still, he would prepare himself for a plan B. Inside the room, Sia's heart was beating at an incredible rate, and Layla could feel and see this too. She was wondering why it seemed like Sia trusted her so much. She was just as much a part of Quinn's group as anyone else. Sia then looked over at Layla and gave a big smile. "Do you not even think of me as part of Quinn's team?" Layla thought. With the first job on Quinn's list done, there were a few more things he wanted to take a look at. In his hand right now was the blue crystal that he had obtained from the tunnel from below. He was sure Logan would be interested in such a thing, but there was a second reason he wanted to visit Logan as well. To see and test out the details of the new skill he had obtained, Shadow Eater.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.